also integral in the ICT sector. That has prepared me adequately. Also, have been the consultant about 10 years ago for development of strategic plan for the Africa Telecommunications Research Institute, that is FIHRM. This is a training institution for that industry, and I've gotten a wealth of experience in discerning the operational environment within which telecommunications sector operates, Mr. Chairman. Apart from that, Mr. Chairman, I've had existential experience of serving as a council member of the Kenya School of Government, and my experience in that space also prepares me adequately to understand the operations of the public sector. So, in short, Mr. Chairman, the wealth of existential experience spanning over 22 years which I've gained in the public sector prepares me adequately to understand, comprehend the operational environment within the public sector operates, the policy frameworks that guide or govern that sector, and emerging issues in the operational environment that we need to align to moving forward, Mr. Chairman. Within the political space, Mr. Chairman, may I also mention, for purposes of clarity, that I've had the opportunity to serve in the year 2012-2013 as the head of the CORD Presidential Campaign Secretariat, Mr. Chairman, and also Chief Campaign Manager to the then CORD Presidential candidate. Subsequent to that, I've also had a stint within the ANC party, where I also served as a close ally and strategic advisor to the party leader then of the ANC party, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, and also ran for a parliamentary seat during the elections, by-elections in Kibra in the year 2019. Subsequent to that, Mr. Chairman, I've been part and parcel of the Kenya Kwanza presidential campaign, being a member of the Presidential Campaign Steering Council, being a member of the Economic Advisory Team, which came up with the bottom-up model and also developed the plan, the economic, the campaign manifesto, popularly known as the plan, and subsequently also developed the 48 economic charters on the basis of which we made commitments to the people by way of what we are going to do with respect to service delivery once we come into government. I've also served as Deputy Secretary General of the UDA party, responsible for policy and strategy, Mr. Chairman, but I've since then resigned, vacated that position, effective 11th of October 2022. So moving forward, what I'm saying in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman, is that I'm fully prepared for this position, and I'm ready to execute this mandate if I'm cleared by this committee.
Thank you, Eliud. I will now invite members to ask you any questions or to make any statement towards your nomination, and I'll start with the Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Owalo, good morning and congratulations on your nomination as for Cabinet Secretary for Information, Communication and Digital Economy.
Thank you.
I think this is something Kenyans want to know.
Yes.
I know you know it, but I want you to state it to Kenyans so they can be able to judge your suitability for the position.
Yes.
As you know, the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto has prioritized the creation of employment for more than 5 million unemployed Kenyan youth. It's also hoped that the business process outsourcing industry will create jobs in places like the Konza Technopolis, which is almost at a standstill at the moment as we speak.
Yes.
So Kenyans want to know what plans do you have for revamping and accelerating the completion and uptake of the Technopolis and contributing towards the commitment for creating jobs in that industry. Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
We'll take four
questions.
then you can answer them in the order they came or in whichever order you like.
Okay.
Kimani Chungu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, let me declare interest that I worked closely with the nominee Eliud Owalo, as he said, in UDA and in the Kenya Kwanza economic team. And I indeed appreciate valid skills, even in microeconomic analysis. But Owalo, maybe I'll begin with the microeconomic analysis of your net worth.
Yes.
You indicate that you have land up country within Siaya County, valued at about 200 million shillings.
Yes.
I would want to know the acreage, whether it's one parcel and the acreage. Two, you indicate that you have about 200,000 Europhylla eucalyptus trees sitting on 20 acres, valued at about 160 million. From basic arithmetic, means you have 10,000 trees per acre. I don't know how practical that would be to have 10,000 eucalyptus trees on per acre. That's on your net worth. With a quick microeconomic analysis now that you have very good expertise in that area. On what you are being nominated for, Eliud, the Postal Corporation of Kenya has leased numerous of its assets across the country. Buildings, land to individuals. I would want to hear whether you may want to review some of these leases and their benefit to the corporation, because this is a corporation that's now on its deathbed. Employees of the Postal Corporation of Kenya are going for months without pay, while numerous of its assets are not deriving value for it. I'd also want to hear your thoughts on the sale of telecom spectrum, especially in the last 1 year, telecom spectrum that have been sold, and to the benefit of two prominent families in this country, and not to the benefit of the country or the sector that you're going to work in. I think I'll take that for now.
Yes, Honorable Chair. Let me also declare that Mr. Owalo and I both hail from Siaya County. And besides, we have worked previously very closely with Mr. Owalo in ODM. I remember during those days, Eliud, I, and a few others were what I would call ideological soulmates. And so on that basis that I want to proceed with my question. One, Mr. Owalo, you will recall during those heady days, some two incidents. One is on the 14th of January, 2015. You led a team to Langata Primary School at the height of the controversy surrounding the alleged grabbing of its land by certain private developers and investors. You later addressed the media at the school compound, castigating these private developers. Okay? And in fact, you could have said that these developers had hatched the plot to grab the land towards Christmas Day of the previous year and completed the fraudulent transaction within a matter of days through the connivance of the relevant state organs. What I want to know is, if you still hold the view, very strong view that you held then, that primitive accumulation of wealth and grabbing of public property is something to be eschewed, something to be frowned upon. Two is on the 16th of July 2013, remember you were summoned by the DCI over allegations of a plot to destabilize the then Jubilee government. Okay? And you went on record again to clarify that the summon had been made by a Mr. Cheriot of the DCI, who had wanted you to clarify certain issues. Well, when you came out, of course, you decried this kind of move as an abuse of state power and misuse of government institutions. Do you still hold that view? Thirdly, as I finish, is I have gleaned through your private website. And in that private website, you pride yourself as a market leader in the field of organizational restructuring. I would want to know what kind of restructuring you envisage, particularly with the Media Council of Kenya, which will be under your ambit, purview, when you are confirmed. You remember the case of the CEO of this council arbitrarily attempting to throw out a board member, and Parliament had to come in to stop that illegal move. And again, the issue of funding of the council. How is the council accountable for the funds that are appropriated to it? Okay. Finally, is the elephant, the big animal called government advertising agency. This agency has become a tool being used by the state to stifle freedoms, as envisaged under Article 33, that's of expression, 34, media freedom, and 35, the right to information held by the state. It is also being used to punish certain media houses by denying them advertisements. So what are you going to do to reform this area? Thank you.
Robert?
Thank you, Chair. I would like I know the nominee is aware that National Assembly have passed the cyber crimes bill, and it was actually assented to by His Excellency the President to become an act of Parliament. Then it found its Waterloo in the court of law. Now, knowing and noting that the way social media has spread and the kind of things that people are posting on social media, particularly our young children, when they come out of Form 4 and get a smartphone, one of the things that will go out there is to start probably either transmitting information that is not true, that is fake news. Several times they've killed people who are still alive, and also to insult leaders. His Excellency, the former president, did say that he came out of Facebook and Twitter because of those insults. Kenya has been, I think, ranked one of the worst cyberbullies. And for your information, Canada is the least in cyberbullying. The only bully, I think, in Canada was a Kenyan who has since left. Now, I wanted to know, what will you do to ensure that this situation is sorted out and is controlled? And of course, finally, I would like to know whether Kenya Kwanza still maintains that they will provide free internet everywhere.
Thank you.
Eliud, you can now answer those four.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Those questions have brought to the fore very pertinent issues which I want to respond to. On the issue of jobs, Mr. Chairman, we would, as a matter of priority, leverage on ICT to create jobs. One of the fundamental areas that we will target, of course, is agriculture. Through optimal deployment of ICT, Mr. Chairman, we are able to add value to the processes along the value chain so that we enhance efficiency and effectiveness within the production processes in the agricultural sector to create jobs, Mr. Chairman. Two, with respect to digitization of government services, which is going to be also a key result area for me in this sector, we envisage to create a critical mass of digital jobs with a view to effectively bringing into the job market current unemployed youths who are actually qualified but lack opportunities, Mr. Chairman. Three, we want, as opposed to just formal jobs, we want to ensure that we encourage and facilitate the culture of entrepreneurship, Mr. Chairman, through effective deployment of ICT, more so with respect to the digital jobs that we want to create, and the massive ICT literacy program that the industry envisages to be undertaken under this ministry, Mr. Chairman, we will equip not just students in high schools with the relevant ICT skills, but we will also ensure that correspondingly the teaching fraternity are well equipped with the relevant IT skills, so that we have got a critical mass of young people getting out into the job market with skills that can facilitate entrepreneurship in this sector, as opposed to opting for white-collar jobs, so that people are self-employed, Mr. Chairman. In the same vein, through adequate innovation and creativity, Mr. Chairman, we can leverage on the potential of KONZA to, one, facilitate production of cheap equipment, devices, which will be a means of creating jobs, ICT devices, which will be a means of creating jobs along the manufacturing value chain, on one hand. But two, also, we can leverage on the potential of KONZA to facilitate development of ICT software, which also along the value chains will create a critical mass of jobs, Mr. Chairman. So, granted, KONZA is currently punching below its weight. We can do much better, but it is on the right trajectory, Mr. Chairman. And if we put into place appropriate measures and means of revamping the operations of KONZA, including but not limited to enhancing its status by anchoring its operations on the mandate provided through an act of parliament, we can actually enable KONZA to operate at optimal capacity levels, Mr. Chairman. The second question was in relation to the net worth, more so with respect to the commercial trees which I plant. My proposition, Mr. Chairman, was that I am able to attach a value of 160 million shillings to these trees, and the honorable member for Kikuyu, Honorable Chungwa, has indicated that this will amount to 10,000 trees per acre, Mr. Chairman. I stand guided on this, but I believe that what I gave is actually a rough estimate of what the value proposition is based on valuation reports which I've gotten, Mr. Chairman. But I can counter-check that. With respect to the Postal Corporation of Kenya, the issue of the properties that the Postal Corporation owns, I do believe, and I'm a strong advocate of organizations.
Chairman, the nominee indicated you have a valuation.
Come again?
You have a valuation, or is that?
Not a valuation report, but estimates, which have been given, yes. Yeah. I don't have the valuation report here.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can get it.
But the land is in Waincia?
It's here, yes, here county.
Acreage?
Acreage is over 200 acres.
Out of order, Honorable Kimani, you have to do it through the chair. We're just engaging the witness.
The acreage is over 200 acres.
Sorry, because I had asked the specific questions and it was not answering specifically, because I had asked the actual acreage.
Yes.
And the trees had indicated it would average 10,000 trees per acre, which if you try and squeeze 10,000 trees on an acre, they will not fit.
Perhaps I need to look at the whole, re-engineer that whole space with respect to the statistics, Mr. Chairman, but the acreage is about 200 acres, out of which, as we speak, about 20 acres is on Europhila trees. But I can actually counter-check this fact and get back to the committee at an appropriate time. On the issue of Postal Corporation owning properties which are underutilized, from a private sector perspective, I'm a strong advocate of organizations concentrating on their core business, Mr. Chairman. And perhaps this could be an avenue of diversifying the revenue stream if we could get certain partners or partners from the private sector partnering with Postal Corporation to develop some of these properties instead of leaving them idle, this could actually be a means of diversifying the revenue streams of Postal Corporation, Mr. Kenya. On the sale of telecom, one, my understanding is that telecom holds a critical mass of strategic ICT infrastructure that serves various facets of our Kenyan economy, Mr. Chairman. Strategic in the sense that some of these are critical factors or critical services within the government ecosystem. As much as telecom had gone private, it would be prudent that as much as we advocate for privatization of entities, this should not compromise national security, in my understanding, Mr. Chairman. This is something that I believe the National Treasury, which holds shares in that entity on behalf of the Kenyan public, took into due consideration. And I promise that if I'm successful at this stage upon assumption of office, I'll quickly consult with my counterpart at the National Treasury so that we get a feasible way forward on the issue of telecom, while not at the same time negating the principle of privatization, which I hold very dear, Mr. Chairman. Now, on the issue of my ideological orientation, the Honorable Member has mentioned that on the 14th of January 2015, I raised issues with the grabbing of Langata Primary School land and whether or not I still hold the same position. Now, I'm a strong believer in good governance, Mr. Chairman, and the issues that I raised at that point in time perhaps brought this issue into the public domain. I believe that these issues are now before the courts of law, and we need to wait for our judicial system to bring this to a logical conclusion, Mr. Chairman. Now, as much as we need to hold dear the principles of good governance, I, in the same vein, believe that we need to allow independent institutions, Mr. Chairman, to execute their mandate without any undue influence from any sector in government. And if institutions are independent, let us not have any other arm of government interfering in the independent institutions or the operations of those independent institutions. So I believe that the institutions which are charged with this responsibility will execute their mandate with respect to this case to a logical conclusion. And at that point in time, we will stand guided accordingly, Mr. Chairman. There's also the issue of I having been summoned to the CID headquarters on 16th of July 2013 on alleged matters of having some intentions to destabilize the then Jubilee government. Mr. Chairman, it is indeed true that those summons were issued one morning. I got those summons. I organized myself quickly and reported to the CID headquarters. But when I got there, I came to realize that the CID acted on some claims or allegations by some anonymous complainant. And at that point in time, the CID had not ascertained the veracity or otherwise of those allegations. I was indeed asked to write a statement, but I declined as a matter of principle because I felt that it was incumbent upon the CID to undertake its investigations. And once they had conclusively undertaken their investigations and come up with a technically feasible position, they were at that point then in time duty-bound to serve on me. But I was not going to help the CID in undertaking its investigations, Mr. Chairman. The irony is, Mr. Chairman, that at the same time when I was summoned, I also simultaneously applied for a certificate of good conduct from the same CID, Mr. Chairman, which came back in the affirmative. The CID did indicate that they would summon me if they had got something substantive that they wanted me to respond to. To date, about 10 years down the line, they have never called me back. The matter ended there, and that's how the case. Those are the facts of the case, Mr. Chairman. On the issue of organizational restructuring, what do I envisage to do with respect to the Media Council? I'm a strong advocate of self-regulation of industries and sectors. I believe that we have got adequate capacity within the media fraternity to self-regulate itself. The role of the ministry would be limited to provision of a policy framework that facilitates an enabling environment to facilitate that, Mr. Chairman. I would rather the media fraternity regulates itself while we create that enabling environment. But if I'm successful and I assume office, I'll of course initiate constant, regular consultations with stakeholders in that industry so that we discern emerging issues from time to time that perhaps as a ministry we will then have to respond to or align our operations to, just to look at what is emerging based on those consultations, and then we will deal with it. The issue of government advertising agency and whether or not it is curtailing the freedoms of the media. Now, I believe the intention of the government or introducing the government in advertising agency to regulate or to administer advertisement of public sector entities, most of the ministries, was well-intentioned. In my understanding, the intention was to ensure optimal utilization of budgetary provisions for advertisement. This, again, is an issue we can look at, and depending on whatever feedback we get from the stakeholders, I believe in a participatory approach to leadership, Mr. Chairman, then we can re-engineer everything in that space at that point in time, based on matters arising therefrom or incidental thereto, Mr. Chairman. On the issue of computer misuse and cybercrime bail, and of course the whole space of social media and whether or not we should regulate social media in conformity to the laws. Fundamentally, as a matter of principle, I believe in personal discipline and self-regulation. That is the starting point. As a matter of courtesy, we know we have got the national values which all of us are incumbent to align to. We need, first of all, to sensitize ourselves on these national values so that all players, the social media included, act and exercise their freedom of association with utmost responsibility. I would, however, as much as we have got the laws and regulations, not a strong proponent of curtailing media freedom. But the way forward is that within the confines of the law and based on the output of stakeholder forums that I intend to initiate, we should be able to develop a common position on the way forward. But we have got the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Bill 2018, which actually gives adequate provisions for governing the operations of this space, Mr. Chairman. Subsequent amendments have also been made to propose to this bill through the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Amendment Bill 2021. So I believe from a legal, regulatory, and policy perspective, we have got all that we require to ensure that this space is adequately regulated, but fundamentally without curtailing the freedoms of expression as espoused in the dictates of our constitutional dispensation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take Owen Bayer. I'll take Mary Masse. I'll take Raso. I'll take Mule and Naisula. You okay, Owen.
All right.
Let me step you down.
Okay.
Give to the Honorable Dawood and Raso, the one to go to the most. You want to ask questions and wait for answers, or then it will make no difference? I've thought you had to throw in a question and leave us to take the answer. Okay? Then, okay, I'll give you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll give you with Raso and Mishi. Mishi, you also want to put the most?
It's Friday today.
Yes. You finish, then I can excuse you as we go on with the rest. Oh, and I hope you don't mind. Matters of faith are very sensitive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Let me congratulate the nominee. Your predecessor, C.S. Musheru, introduced the Ajira program, which has not gone out to all constituencies of this country. In your position, if you are confirmed, do you think you will continue with that Ajira program and expand it, or you're going to do something more radical than what C.S. Musheru did? Secondly, regarding internet connectivity, I remember the President Ruto talking about internet connectivity for the whole country. How will you achieve it, and are you thinking of doing it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Owalo, you have been doing some work for government and quasi-government institutions, particularly in the area of strategic plans, balance scorecard, job evaluation. But within the same form, you have said that there's no conflict of interest. What are you likely to do? Because in case the House approves your nomination, you'll be sitting at an elevated position to actually influence jobs to be given to your company. How would you avoid that? The other thing is about KBC. KBC is a depository of the history of this country, and it is the mother institution that has given birth to all other media houses. What is it that you are likely to do that it does not just become an archive, but also a leading media house, like what we see the BBC has happened to the BBC over a century? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, as per Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, they have said that they are going to reduce the cost of making phone calls and internet, and also allow Kenyans, and especially the youth, to access online platform so that they can access job opportunities for entertainment, for businesses and other use. I don't know how viable is it going to happen, because the last regime, where His Excellency was the Deputy President, you promised to give laptop to all the students in our schools, but it never materialized. I don't know how different are you going to do it right now to ensure that this one is achieved. The other one is on e-learning as a remedy to ensure that we reduce the cost of education. But I would also want to hear whether you're going to extend this in terms of adult education centers, where so many Kenyans who could not access education during their early ages, now they want to be literate. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Eliud, you can quickly answer those short, precise questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ajira digital program is a fundamental and, in my view, very feasible proposition. Yes, we will continue with it because it is actually a mechanism of leveraging on our digital platforms to create jobs for the youth. If we enhance the ICT infrastructure in place, Mr. Chairman, we should be able to have this Ajira digital program rolled to all parts of the country. And with the intended rollout of 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable, we should be able to facilitate access to the Ajira digital program in all parts of the country. With respect to internet connectivity, yes, we will enhance this. How do we do this, Mr. Chairman? One, the starting point again is the ICT infrastructure. Ensure that through the digital superhighway, we have got reliable and stable and extensive ICT infrastructure all over the country. And then once we have done that, we come in to see ways and means of lowering the cost of internet so that we have got access to internet all over the country, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, ceteris paribus, the cost of internet, like any other product in the market, is a function of the inputs that go into the productive processes. If we lower the cost of ICT infrastructure, we should then be able to end up with affordable internet everywhere, up to the village and even the household level, Mr. Chairman. On the issue of my hitherto extensive consultancy experience within government and SAGAS, and whether or not or how I will handle that moving forward, Mr. Chairman, I strongly subscribe to the principles of good governance. I understand the fact that if I assume office as CS, I cannot continue undertaking consultancy for government. As we speak, I've already given firm instructions to my lawyers to evaluate this position and see how fast, upon assumption of office, if I'm cleared, I can then vacate the consultancy space for government, Mr. Chairman, and this is something that I promise to do. There will be absolutely no conflict of interest on my part with respect to consultancy assignments, more so with respect to specifically the execution of these assignments by the firm where I've been the managing consultant, Eliud and Associates. With respect to KBC, I fully and exclusively agree with the honorable member that something needs to be done about KBC. Mr. Chairman, it is ironical that KBC, with its strong brand and wide network of infrastructure, is today punching below its weight in the marketplace. This will be one of my key areas of intervention if I come into office as CS for this ministry, Mr. Chairman. So what do I intend to do? One, I intend to revitalize the operations of KBC, first of all, by rebranding it. I don't quite understand the reason that informed, first of all, the change of name from the Voice of Kenya to the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, Mr. Chairman. You know, there are certain very simple, basic things you can do and just change, turn over an organization. Just by changing the name of KBC to and reverting it back, for example, I'm just giving a hypothetical example, to its hitherto Voice of Kenya. That stands KBC in good state to be seen as a market leader in that sector. Simple things. You just rebrand it. Two, we can strengthen or leverage on ICT to re-engineer the content of KBC so that it gets effective positioning in the market. Three, we need to revitalize the infrastructure of KCB so that it is in tandem not just with market needs, but also benchmarked with global best practices in that industry, Mr. Chairman. Those are some of the interventions, and I promise, without fear of contradiction, Mr. Chairman, that the issue of KBC will not just be one of my thematic areas of key research areas of intervention, but I would also want to be held accountable by virtue of having a very clear performance indicator as far as turning KBC is concerned. The issue of cost of internet and creation of jobs, yes, I believe I've answered this, but I can just come up again and give more value proposition to my earlier answer. If we enhance the ICT infrastructure and ensure that we have got adequate skills through the digital literacy program, not just for the students, but also the teachers and also other market players, such as the health sector and the public at large, we should then be able to leverage on ICT to enhance efficiency and effectiveness in our production processes, not just to bring down the cost of living, but also to create jobs, Mr. Chairman. Issue of laptops, yes, this is something that I believe is doable, and in any case we will do it. Through the Konza Metropolis, Mr. Chairman, there is already a rollout of distribution of these laptops. But it is not just an issue of distribution of laptops. It must be in tandem with simultaneous undertaking of a massive e-literacy program at all levels, Mr. Chairman, so that the demand in the market is responded to, Mr. Chairman. The e-learning for adult education centers, this again, just the same way we are going to have the digital villages targeting the youth, we can equally do the same for the adults, Mr. Chairman, so that we really have a truly digital economy without unnecessary segmentation of that marketplace where we have some lopsided interventions where perhaps only the youth are benefiting, but we leave out the adults, Mr. Chairman. So yes, it can be done.
Thank you, Owen.
All right.
Yes, sir. Mary, I'm very clear what I'm doing, Mary. I had given Owen Bayer, yourself. I was going on, then they raised the issue of going to the mosque. So now I'll give to Owen, you, and then I'll give to the team at the back. I'll give to Naisula, Ikaria, and Mule. Please ask one question each so that we manage our time well. I think the gentleman is doing reasonably well.
Thank you, Speaker and Chair. My question on Nigeria has been responded to, but I would like to focus on something you said when you were telling us about yourself. You said you're an expert in organizational restructuring and strategic planning. And in that vein, you showed us how you have been involved in almost all ministries in this country, developing the strategic plan or ideas about how to carry out some work. But seemingly, having said you did all that, this government, the past government, didn't seem to have touched the lives of people despite your infusing those ideas. And the cost of life went high, cost of living went high, everything else didn't go right, and yet this government seemed to have been exclusively operating on your ideas. What value do you bring to the new government? What is it, what new ideas do you have that will permeate government and make life better, reduce the cost of living, make life good for Kenyans? And what went wrong despite your ideas? Thank you, Chair.
Mary?
Thank you, Speaker. Through you, the nominee. One of the other pledges that we gave to the Kenyans through the Kenya Kwanza pledges was the mainstreaming, was the need to mainstream the development of arts and culture. I'm talking about theaters, music halls, art galleries, into the infrastructure development program. We all are aware that we have a lot of talent out there. And the members, I know, each one of us has had to support an artist. Where I come from, they go and record music in Uganda. So my question is, as Cabinet Secretary, what are some of the areas you'll prioritize, and how will you address the challenge of funding the infrastructure projects to unlock the potential of the creative economy? And I offer you 5 acres of land in Teso South to start one for Busia County. Thank you.
Yes, Naisula?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Owalo, how do you facilitate the inclusion of students from the rural communities or those that are in far-flung areas who don't have access to modern technology and internet connectivity, just so that there is equity? And Mr. Chair, if you'll just allow me to add this, that having worked at KBC, I don't think that rebranding is the main problem. It has been rebranded and rebranded and rebranded before. I don't think that is the main challenge. You might have to relook at it. But I want to also hear about the staff. You have to look at their motivation when you look at promotions, their salaries, just so that KBC is not only an incubator of good talent, and then they move to the private media houses, but you should actually aim to retain the great talent that is at KBC.
I am impressed, Mr. Owalo, by what you've done on the aspect of the pro bono, sponsoring for my AFC and others. How I wish that that amount of money would have been used at these small clubs in Siaya village for you to be able to tap talent, because as you have said, I've seen some of the articles that you've written on how the government should come in and save FC and Goma, which is something that is okay, but how I wish you would have gone down to the village. And my question is about if we digitalize services, government. When I was doing my course, we were told as we also digitalize, that the aspect of cutting employment is also very huge. As you digitalize, then you reduce the number of employment, because if things were done manually, you could see how the number of employees, and yet Kenya Kwanza is there to create opportunities, job opportunities, and to reduce the unemployment percentage. So how are you going to balance as you digitalize vis-a-vis, killing job opportunities that are brought by that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. This goes to the nominee, and my question goes by what is in the public domain, which is an upping of state-owned fiber optic network project, whereby the lender, who is Exim Bank of China, is said to be in debt of 21 billion Kenya shillings, and the access of the project documents, contracts signed between locals and international, has been an opaque and has not been very clearly exposed to the public. As a cabinet nominee, will you be in a position to give us a clear openness on this project, together with device management system being installed in communication mobile for Kenyans, which might lead to serious surveillance of Kenyans without their notice? I know you might not want to comment on this because it's an issue between the Communication of Kenya and the Supreme Court, which they need to pronounce themselves. But your view as an expert of management, are these realities, if you are confirmed by this committee, to bring to light these two kind of projects to Kenyans to make sure that we are safe?
Eliud, I think we can take the remaining 5 so that you can answer all of them.
Okay.
Where questions overlap, you just
harmonize.
Yeah, you harmonize.
Yeah.
Amisi, then Kosin, then George, then Ferdinand, then Mukami.
Thank you.
One question each, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The nominee, you started by describing the various types of markets, from the monopolies or oligopolies. And touching on monopolies that have controlled the market here in Kenya, most citizens become suspicious of the monopolies that exist, because they basically cause inequalities, and they wield a lot of economic power. exploit, factors of production, labor and capital to the disadvantage of the other new entrants. Do you think it is a common threat to telecommunication in the near future and even in the media? Because when you focus so much on one state media to the disadvantage of the other, in a very highly competitive global environment, is this a threat, monopolies?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Nominee. My name is Honorable Kosi David, MP for Poko South. I didn't say my name earlier. Mr. Chair, the nominee is coming at a very critical time. Should this House, through this committee, approves him? And there's been a bit of some controversy back and forth, particularly on the marginal areas of this country, which of course is known as arid and semi-arid areas or counties, which then is about 70-80% of the country in terms of network, Honorable Chair. For purpose of communication, security, and so on. And what's the controversy? The controversy is that, for example, Safaricom don't want to do network or build masts there for people to access network. Why? They think that it is not economical, because then people cannot, or maybe they cannot get enough money from the people living around there for purpose of communication. And therefore, Celtel, Telcom, and Safaricom are not interested about this area. 70% of the country. Now, Honorable Owalo, what will you consider? Because there's this fund called Universal Service Fund, which was established by the people of Kenya because of that, so that this fund can be able to build networks in those areas so that Kenyans can access network. But nothing much has been done. What will you do in your 100 days? Will you promise this House that in your 100 days, because millions of those Kenyans living in those areas now are listening to you and watching, and say, what will you do? Will you take that on as one of your performance contracts from ourselves, from myself on behalf, and say you will be able to take this fund to where it is supposed to have been working, which is those areas which people consider uneconomical, and yet they are being people of Kenya living there. Thank you, Chair.
George.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Nominee, we represent rural constituencies, and a while back we were encouraged through CDF to construct ICT hub centers. Not many were constructed because I think there were reservations, because people felt the ministry may not be able to carry this through. But in your own estimation, and upon being confirmed if that is going to happen, do you undertake to us, even to Parliament, that if these ICT hubs are constructed, you will quickly move in, equip them, and our youths are able to access ICT through those hubs for purposes of employment, research, and whatever else we have to do through those hubs?
I see. My name is Ferdinand Onyonyi Kwanza constituency. I have seen a bit of a realignment of the parastatals in the government. They said that even some departments are realigned wrongly. I know of a case where I've been discussing with my colleagues here as well. You find that irrigation department, which is basically in agriculture, was moved to, I know irrigation is water, but what you irrigate from crops is moved to blue economy. I don't know by name or whatever, the alignment of that. And if you have been a consultant, I see you're very vast in this, and I respect you for that reason. Again, we have had a case where government bought shares from telecom. Yeah. Now I think it's, so to say, it's now set on. Telecom is set on. I don't know for what reason it has happened. And now you find now Telecom is not doing the same thing. We used to use it for postal or for land, moving the communication by land. Now it's no longer there. I'd rather get Matatu, put whatever I have to take to my country, up country, instead of using the post office. What's your view on this? Am I right or you're right? Without this arrangement, which I think, in my view, is actually taking us backward. Or is it for individual gains? Thank you. Mukami, the last. Ms. Price.
Thank you. Our nominee, I'm impressed you've done your homework. What will you do to safeguard talent and intellectual property for the youth who will be the drivers of the digital economy? And I would also like to know what you think about the split of Safaricom to M-Pesa and Voice. Thank you.
You can quickly answer those, Eliud.
Okay, first of all, from Honorable Massey, the issue of mainstreaming the development of arts and culture, the creative economy. One, what we need to do, first of all, is to tackle this issue by understanding the functional domains which fall within this sector. We have got music, we have got design, we have got theater, just to mention but a few, and even arts and crafts. Now, this is an economy, Mr. Chairman, that advises to exploit the potential of hitherto untapped capabilities amongst our youth. How do we do this? First of all, there is need for appropriate legal and regulatory framework in this industry. We have got the Copyright Act. This needs to be strengthened, so that the intellectual properties of these young people is not taken advantage of by middlemen or based on dysfunctionalities in the marketplace. Two, we need to empower these people through provision of adequate access to capital. How do we do this? If I'm confirmed and I take over office, I need to initiate the Kenya Film Bill and liaise with the House so that it becomes an act that will facilitate the establishment of a film fund, Mr. Chairman, that can facilitate access to cheap credit, provision of widely accessible credit, but also being disbursed at optimal rates of interest, way below the prevailing market or bank rates, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, is he coming back, Chairman?
Yes.
Is he coming back to my question or...
Oh yes, Honorable Owen Bayer, the issue of restructuring, Oh yes, I've developed many strategic plans, but then there's a disconnect between the number of strategic plans I've developed and what has been witnessed by way of results. Now, let me clarify, Mr. Chairman, that strategy has got three facets. There's the component of strategy formulation, there's the facet of strategy implementation, there's the facet of strategy monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. All these facets of strategy, Mr. Chairman, are anchored on what critical success factor, which is leadership. We don't have a shortage of strategic plans in this country. Historically, since independence, we have always developed good strategic plans. But we have been having a leadership deficit. What do I mean by a leadership deficit? Anytime you come up with a major change program, you must have a transformational leadership that can facilitate effective implementation of those change programs while at the same time ensuring that you have got an elaborate risk mitigation framework, Mr. Chairman. We have had good plans, but the will to implement some of these plans has been a challenge, based on leadership at the top echelons, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy, Mr. Chairman, that today, under the Kenya Kwanza government, we have got a leadership that is transformational, a leadership that is a change agent, a leadership that is ready and willing to venture into hitherto unfamiliar territories for the benefit of the Kenyan people. And I believe that in the next phase of our strategic planning cycle, where we are going to develop the 2023-2022 strategic plan for ministries and the implementing agencies, we will not just come up with strategic plans that will not be implemented, Mr. Chairman. So that then will facilitate successful implementation of the strategic plans. So the answer is leadership deficit has been a problem. The issue of mainstreaming of arts, that one I've answered. The issue of whether students will have access to technology, I believe in the principles of equity, impartiality, and equitability, Mr. Chairman. We are going to enhance the ICT infrastructure indiscriminately to all parts of the country, so that we have got adequate ICT infrastructure in every village up to every household, Mr. Chairman, so that our ICT functional domain can contribute to the extent of the advised 10% of the GDP, Mr. Chairman. Issue of KBC, yes, I agree with Mheshimiwa again that we need to look at staff motivation. My position on this is as below, Mr. Chairman. One, the remuneration structures in government are largely regulated by the Salaries Review Commission. But as a consultant, I believe that our remuneration architecture should be informed by an objective job evaluation exercise, whether it is done by SRC or any other private sector provider. But the guiding principle should be the ability to pay. If KBC was turned around through an effective turnaround strategy and it became viable, feasible, and has the ability to pay, nothing stops you from telling SRC that, look, these are the salaries and remuneration levels that you are proposing to enable us attract and retain the staff that we already have. We want to benchmark our salaries and benefits levels with the prevailing market rates, and we have got the ability to pay. SRC will not stop you. The only problem we have in the public sector, Mr. Chairman, is that organizations rely, or largely parastatals rely largely on the exchequer for purposes of funding. We need to move away from that space so that we become creative and innovative by way of exploring new and more viable means of resource mobilizations, anchored on an appropriate and elaborate, innovative resource mobilization strategy, Mr. Chairman. Of course, backed up with diversification of the revenue streams. Issues of sponsorships, which I've undertaken over a long period of time to our sporting fraternity, Gor Mahia, AFC, and the like. Yes, I agree with you fully and exclusively that we need to cascade this down to the lowest levels. Just yesterday, I was having a discussion with my counterpart nominee for sports, Honorable Ababu Namwamba, and this is something that we want to pursue together, Mr. Chairman. I've got a lot of passion for sports and development of the hitherto untapped youth talent. As to whether or not digitization will lead to the cutting down of employment, I think that is the traditional thinking as opposed to the innovative thinking, Mr. Chairman. We can grow the two hand in hand by leveraging on technology while at the same time exploiting that potential to create jobs. It's a question of how creative we are. let us not deploy the traditional approach that where there is one additional computer, one person must go home. On the issue of fiber optic network, as to whether or not or the issue of Exim Bank of Kenya having been a lender through an OPEC system, I would seek indulgence of the House that you allow me, if I'm approved by this committee, to get to the House so that I hold adequate consultations with my counterpart at the National Treasury at that point in time, so that based on the principle of collective responsibility in government, Mr. Chairman, I'm not coming up with a proposition before this committee that will not stand the test of time. On the issue of monopolies and whether or not...
Yes,
thank you.
Why don't you let him finish, then you will seek your clarification.
I just want him to finish one for all because it's something...
Oh.
Okay, fine.
On the issue of monopolies and whether or not that can cause disproportionalities in the market space, Mr. Chairman, my stand is that the role of government is to put in place an enabling policy and regulatory framework that ensures that we have got a level playing ground in the marketplace. Once that is in place, then it is incumbent upon each and every player in that space to exercise its strategic agility and maneuverability for effective positioning in that marketplace to attain both comparative advantage and competitiveness. So I would really not want to go or buy the argument that monopolies will lead to market efficiencies, and therefore we need to go a step further and curtail strongly performing organizations so that they come to the same level with organizations which are inefficient. Organizations have to be creative, innovative to survive. And in that operational environment, Mr. Chairman, it is cutthroat competition, and it is incumbent upon you as a player to cut your own niche in that operational environment. Ours is to provide an enabling legal, regulatory, and policy environment as government. The issue of semi-autonomous areas, yes, as to whether or not we will extend the ICT infrastructure into those places, yes, and we will actually leverage on the Universal Service Fund, yeah, so that we utilize the resources available within that basket to extend the ICT infrastructure to those places so that we have got some equity and equitability in the provision of ICT infrastructure, Mr. Chairman. The issue of constructing ICT hubs or centers, these will be cascaded down to the lowest levels, Mr. Chairman. We will continue with this. It is already work in progress, and we will continue with this to the lowest levels of our operations, of the bottom of the pyramid, so that as we extend this, it is also in tandem with our bottom-up economic proposition. The issue of realignment of government functions with the mandates, functional mandates of the ministries. Executive orders, Mr. Chairman, are not cast on stone. They are developed by human beings. And when there is an anomaly detected, yeah, within what the functional mandates of various ministries espouses, and where the implementing agencies are domiciled, these can always be relooked at. In fact, as I speak, ourselves as cabinet nominees, we have been asked already just to look at the executive order and propose any value proposition based on these functional mandates to facilitate effective alignment. So this can be done, it will be done, and it has always been done, Mr. Chairman. The issue of telecom as to whether we are reverting to state ownership, I'm a strong believer that the work of government is to provide an enabling legal and regulatory framework as opposed to competing with the private sector in business, Mr. Chairman. But for strategic reasons, which I had mentioned earlier, we we also need to recognize that Telecom Kenya has at its disposal or within its jurisdiction a critical mass of strategic infrastructure. That space has to be looked at from various facets of government, not just the ICT ministry itself. It has got to be looked at from the National Treasury, from the Ministry of Interior, and again, based on the principle of collective responsibility within government, I promise that if I assume office, I will discuss and get to a level playing ground or develop a common denominator with my counterparts, and we will come up with a feasible way forward as far as telecom is concerned within the short run. The issue of safeguarding talent and intellectual property, I believe that answered that again. We need to strengthen the legal and regulatory framework. I've talked about the enforcement of the copyright law. I've also talked about the issue of just ensuring that we eliminate duplicity of effort between the Kenya Film Corporation and the Kenya Film Classification Board. Through a relevant bill taken to Parliament, Mr. Chairman, we can actually, in my view, end up with one entity that can take care of the whole of that space while charged with the mandate of ensuring optimal exploitation of the talent that we have amongst our youth on one hand, and also through the establishment and operationalization of a Kenya Film Fund, ensuring that we have got adequate provision of finances to these young people on the other, Mr. Chairman.
Split, through Chairman, split over Safaricom.
You see, Mr. Chairman, there are very basic but fundamental economic principles that we need to conform or align to in the private sector. Safaricom has got two main facets. There's the telco side and there's the finance side. The telco side will largely be regulated by policy formulation from the ICT and Digital Economy Ministry. On the flip side of it, the money side, based on the law, needs to be regulated by provisions of the CBK Act. I believe that to facilitate effective regulation, this is what has informed the envisaged split between the two functional domains, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mole.
Thank you. Probably, Nominee, you need to understand my question is coming from the basis whereby the national government want to do connectivity for the entire country, and the county governments, or the 47 counties, whereby we have the national optic pipe project.
Yes.
The issue is this. We need to open up this program to Kenyans, and then Kenyans to understand, whereby we are linking it up with the device management system, that is the DMS, which will likely going to monitor whichever call you will make, whichever call I make, whichever call Wanjiku will make in this country. And that amounts to discrimination on conversation between Kenyans and start monitoring Kenyans. What are your thoughts as the CSITC? Second also.
I'm not opening any round two.
Yeah, you're not.
Answer the questions.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Now, clarification is important.
Yes, President.
You know, Chair. Yes, thank you, Chair. You know, we are here also for people. That's why we are betting. And as representative of the people, I didn't get my answer properly about the network, Mr. Chair.
Poor network.
Poor network. No, really not. Yeah, I agree, poor, and even no network.
Non-existent network.
Non-existent network in the entire pastoralist areas. An example, so that people don't think that we are talking from nowhere. If you go, like, for example, Tiati, there's no network, and that's why there's insecurity. If there was network, maybe we could have even go to those areas. Baragoi, the entire, come to Marsabit, and entire northern chair. It seems maybe the nominee has never been in those areas. Maybe. That's why maybe he might not understand how it is happening. So what is his opinion or take as he might come in if we approve him.
I think the approach should be, if you get this job,
yes,
what are you going to do to have 100% coverage by all these networks across the country?
Yes.
Yes. That is what you want, isn't it?
Yes. One, as a ministry, so that I pick up that question quickly before I refer to the former, we will ensure that there is adequate ICT infrastructure in these areas through the envisaged 100,000 kilometers fiber optic network. That is one. Then two, we will engage the players correspondingly, the market players, to also ensure that they entrench their services to these areas. If the two go hand in hand, we'll be home and dry. It's as simple as that. Okay? That's why we are coming in as change agents to do it, Mr. Chairman. Let us not be captive to the past. We are coming in.
With him.
I'm addressing you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That's why we are coming in to bring about change, Mr. Chair. My apologies. Yeah? We cannot be captive to the past. We are coming in to offer transformational leadership that is going to introduce radical change so that we are not captive to the status quo. And we will do it, Mr. Chairman. The second question was the issue of data security, as Mr. Mule raised. You see, there is the issue of the Data Protection Act on one hand, and the Computer Misuse and Cybersecurity Act on the other, Mr. Chairman. One, the Data Protection Act, among others, is meant to facilitate a situation where data in the hands of the market players is not abused or misused. And the provisions are very clear. So we need actually just to enhance that. And if there are any issues or emerging issues that need to be addressed, again, I've said from the onset that we will adapt a participatory approach and engage all stakeholders so that their views can be integrated into this process. We also need to understand, Mr. Chairman, that the rate of change of legislation or legislative reforms or policy and regulatory reforms is slower than the rate of innovation. So if innovation is ahead of legislation or policy or regulatory framework, then we will definitely introduce changes or propose changes to the existing policy, legal and regulatory frameworks so that it responds to the needs of the market. I believe I've answered.
Eliud Owalo, tell us in 3 minutes what you wish this committee to do for you.
One, Mr. Chairman, in my concluding remarks, my proposition is that I've got a vision for this sector. My vision is an empowered and digitized Kenyan society. To realize this vision, I believe working together with the team that we have within the ministry and the sector at large, including the implementing agencies, we should be able to facilitate economic transformation of Kenya while leveraging on ICT for purposes of competitiveness and sustainable development. I believe that I'm coming into this sector, Mr. Chairman, to offer transformational leadership, to introduce change, and to realize this, I'll ensure that we have got appropriate planning framework within the ministry and the implementing agencies. I'll ensure that we have got structures that are effectively aligned to the strategy at all levels to facilitate implementations of the plans that we'll have. I'll ensure we have got comprehensive performance management framework that will facilitate implementation of these strategic plans, while at the same time also having a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation and reporting framework. This will be anchored on my ability to facilitate provision of transformational leadership that facilitates change within the sector, Mr. Chairman. At the tail end of my tenure, on behalf of government and the industry at large, I would wish that my performance be evaluated on the basis of facilitation of universal access to internet everywhere at affordable rates. I would also wish, which I hereby commit, that my performance should be evaluated on the basis of digitization of government processes to facilitate not just a paperless government, but also to leverage on that technology to create jobs on one hand, while on the flip side of it, also capitalizing on the efficiency and effectiveness that will be facilitated by ICT to reduce the cost of living. I also wish that my performance, Mr. Chairman, as I conclude, will be evaluated on the basis of rejuvenation of the Kenya News Agency, revitalization of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, and revitalization of the Postal Corporation of Kenya in response to the needs of the market, while at the same time benchmarking with global best practices. The will is there, Mr. Chairman. The capabilities, skills, and experience is there. And I can only promise that given the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, we will deliver on this mandate. We are equal to the task, and we will not let Kenyans down. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That's my humble submission.
Thank you, Mr. Eliud Oketch Owalo. That was an interactive session that has been quite interesting. We want to wish you well and allow you to leave to your other duties. Sergeant, you can show the Honorable Owalo the way out.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
No, you are not. What is it you want to ask?
I wanted to find out if I can report to office this afternoon.
No, you can't. You are a nominee.